So, well, I want to thank you all for coming out in this weather to the Thornhill branch for our special Veterans Day program. And I'd like to introduce Ralph Goldsticker, a 97-year-old veteran.
I had a birthday. Combat. I had a birthday since then.
Oh, you're 98?
Yep.
Wow.
It happens.
It must have been a recent birthday, wasn't it?
October 26th.
October 26th.
Yep.
Okay. So, combat bombardier with the 8th Air Force. Okay. So, thank you for being here, and thank you all for coming out in this weather, too.
I thank you all for coming out. Well, I was only one of 16 million that were in the armed forces during World War II. Unfortunately, 400,000 didn't come home, and I think we ought to moment of silence for those since it's Veterans Day. Okay. As I said, I'm one of 16 million. This is my experiences in World War II. So everybody in there had a vital role to play. Maybe mine was a little more difficult or dangerous, but everybody's was important. I was a bombardier navigator in 8th Air Force, flying in a B-17 4-engine bomber. I flew 35 combat missions over France and Germany, starting May 27th and finished in October 1944. The 8th Air Force had 2 missions. One, our bombers were tried to destroy Germany's capability of waging war. And our priority targets were oil refineries, number 1, railroad yards, aircraft plants, and ball bearing factories. And the other mission of the 8th Air Force was to knock down the Luftwaffe. So the fighters would have, after they'd finish escorting us, they would go strafing, try to do what they could on the ground to kill the other German planes. So we'd have air supremacy on D-Day when it happened. Next. Well, that's a B-17G. That's the latest. Go ahead. I got this recruiting poster, I guess in January, probably 42. I knew I was going to get drafted, and I wanted to be an officer. This is a recruiting poster I got. It said you can be a bombardier, pilot, or a navigator, and you can become an officer within 6 months. So I said I wanted to be a pilot. Well, I went to Nashville, enlisted at Jefferson Barracks on the 6th of July, 1942. And after 2 months at JB, I was sent to Nashville, which was the classification center. And we were tested psychologically, physically, mentally, everything to see if we had the requirements to be a pilot or bombardier navigator. Well, I said I wanted to be a pilot. I'd never been in an airplane, but I've seen John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart, the heroes, so I thought that's glamorous. I want to be a pilot. Go ahead. Well, after Nashville, I was sent to Maxwell Field, Alabama. Maxwell Field was an old established air base, so rather than have barracks of 60, we had suites of just 6. These are my roommates in the 6. We were together at Maxwell Field for 6 months for pre-flight, not 6 months, 6 weeks. And we had all kinds of courses. We went to school from 8 in the morning to 5 at night, 6 days a week. And we took, well, I'll read some of the courses. Morse code, that was my nemesis. I just couldn't get it. Every letter I wrote home was, I'm struggling with Morse code. I finally got it 6 minutes, we had it past 10, which I eventually did. We had map reading, customs and courtesy, code of conduct, physics, naval forces, first theory of bombing, aircraft engine, blah, 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 all day for 6 weeks. And then we were off to pilot school. I was with these fellows about 6, 7 months at Nashville, at Maxwell, and at pilot school. These 3 became pilots. He became a navigator. Here I am a bombardier. He was a pilot too. But these 4 were all killed in the war. Go ahead. These are 2 letters that, well, Albert H. was on the end of the picture, and Tom Grimes, which is one of my good friends. Tom is missing in action, and Albert was deceased, so I've never opened the letters. I don't know what's in them, but anyway, the 4 of them were killed during the war. Next. I went to Albany, Georgia, for pilot school, and that's what I trained in. After 10 hours of dual instruction, we had, I went up solo for the first time, and it was great, it really was. I was coming right down the runway, landing at perfect landing. And I thought there was a gust of wind from the left, so I hit the left rudder and spun the thing around and broke off a wing. And I can still see my instructor at the end of the runway throwing his parachute down. How could a student do that? But he did the same thing the next day, so it wasn't so bad. I passed my 20-hour flight check. Then I had, I'd never been in a plane until I got in that plane. It was December 31st, 1942, first time I'd been in an airplane. But I passed my 20-hour check and 40-hour check. The instructor cut the engine. They're supposed to go upwind. I went downwind. But anyway, I got washed out after that, after 46 hours in the air, in that plane, which I did have 10-hour solo, and I still remember it was great flying around that thing. Open cockpit. Someone asked if I had a silk scarf. I did not. Well, I got washed out. I had measles after. I was in the hospital for the week with the measles. Then I went back to Nashville and said I wanted to be a bombardier. I'd seen another movie with Randolph Scott, Bombardier movie. He was a hero, so I said I might as well be a hero too. So I go to Bombardier school. As bombardier, we had 2 50 calibers in the nose, so I had to go to aerial gunnery school. I went to Laredo, Texas for 6 weeks. Go ahead. And we had air-to-air flying. We shot ski trucks moving, trying to teach us how to lead the plane. And anyway, after 6 weeks of aerial gunnery school, I went to Childress, Texas for 12 weeks of bombardiering school. Go ahead. Well, that's the bomb sight. That's the Norden bomb sight. That was our secret weapon in World War II. We're bombing from 27,000 feet, and this would solve the problem of the dropping the bomb toward the target when we release them a quarter or half mile before the target. Go on next. Well, that was a training for our bombardier training. It was 12 weeks, and then they added 6 weeks of navigation on also. So I had 6 weeks of navigation training as well. Then on December 3rd, the day before we graduated, our last air exercise, 2 of our planes collided, and 3 of my friends were killed. If you know anything about the Army, everything is alphabetical. They were Dempsey, Fisher, and French, and Goldsticker was next. But I was commissioned on December 4th, 1943 as a second lieutenant in the Army Air Corps. Okay. Oh, that's me on my 22nd birthday. I was on the way to navigation school. Okay. Well, that was for me. Wrecked the whole town, Willie, who I always thought you would. That's bombardier humor. I tried. I went to MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida, where they're putting together B-17 crews. That was the crew I was assigned to. Joe Antol was our pilot. He was 22. Marty, just 20. Hank was a teacher. He was 25, the navigator. Here I am at 22. And these 3 were all 19. These 2 were the waist gunner. That was a radio operator, a little bit older. That was our escape hatch and also our entry, as you'll see later on. Go ahead. Well, this is the armament on a B-17. I was sitting up in the front here with 2 50 caliber guns in the nose. The top engineer had 2 50 caliber. Ball turret had 2. A waist gunner on each side had 2, and the tail gunner had 2 50 caliber. So we had 10 50 caliber guns protect us. Okay, next. Well, that's the way we're dressed. It was 30 to 40 below zero, not pressurized. That's a navigator and his working table. There's me, not me, but a bombardier in the nose. This was a B-17E or F. The G had the twin guns underneath that are unmanned. Okay, go ahead. Well, that's my view from the airplane. Everyone said you had a great view. You did until you saw this big black cloud of flak you're going to be flying into. Okay, go ahead. Well, after we flew around Florida for about 4 months, we were sent to Savannah, Georgia, and pick up a brand new shiny B-17 and take it to England. We're at Savannah. We went to Fort Dix, New Jersey the first night, and Marty, our co-pilot, was from Far Rockaway, New York, and he told his father we'd be by in the morning. We were right down 100 feet over the rooftops, right down the main street. Well, that's a no-no, but we're going overseas anyway. From there, we went to Peace, New Hampshire, and then up to Labrador. And we stayed a couple extra days in Labrador. Marty, our co-pilot, had a cold and we couldn't fly. And then we got to take an overnight flight from Labrador to Iceland, 8.5-hour flight. And we're kind of worried because we've heard the planes just disappearing. They take off and never hear from them again. And one of our flights from Tampa over to New Orleans, a night flight and back, Hank, our navigator, told the pilot to go 90 degrees. We were already over the Atlantic, so we would have also disappeared, but I was over in the nose. I saw we'd already passed over Florida, so I told him, no, go back. But anyway, we hit Iceland right on the button. The only thing I remember about Iceland they had was snowy, windy, cold. They had outhouses, and that wind would whip up and literally freeze your ass. And now it's a destination for tourists, but not for me. But from there, we went from England into Ireland, then to Scotland, and then to England. We got in England, I think, about the 10th or 12th of May. We were assigned to the 452nd Bomb Group of 728th Squadron. They lost 14 out of 24 planes on May 12th at a flight to Czechoslovakia. They had, at that time, they had P-38s and P-47s, which would only take you about halfway to the target. They had to fight their way in and fight their way out. So we went as replacement in the 452nd. At that time, we had to fly, we went over 25 missions. And I figured if they lose 50% in one day, what's going to happen? Well, we flew around England for about 2 months, 2 weeks it was. And then, go ahead. That's where we were based in England, 452nd. But there it said 28 bomber bases and 17 fighter bases in the area, maybe from Festus up to Alton, from here I made to Wentzville. It was, go ahead. So that was my home for the next 10 months, at Quonset Hut. We had 2 officer air crews, 4 each, and we had a weatherman and a medic in there as our roommates. And it was always cold in there. But the first night I was there, getting ready for bed, and the other crew had flown 22 missions. No one in our group had ever finished 25. They were flak happy. There were 3 live 45 shots fired that night, one shooting to each other, seeing how close they could come to each other. I turned my head to the wall and hoped I survived my first night in England. Well, I did. Go ahead. Well, there I am in front of our airplane, the Deuces Wild 297222, and that's Wiley Campbell, our ground crew chief. Okay, go ahead. Well, for us to fly, there are 19 other people out there besides the air crew. The armor, the people that bring the bomb supply, those put them aboard. We had the weatherman, the dispatcher, you had everybody. The KPs are important, the bakers, the MPs, you name it, to get us off the ground. We couldn't do it by ourselves. Go ahead. Well, in normal mission, they'd come in, well, the night before, they put a red ball up in the officers' club saying there's going to be a mission tomorrow. We didn't know who was flying. But they'd come in, turn on the lights in our Quonset hut and say, Anto, you're flying. That's our crew. So we'd get up about 2:30 or 3 in the morning. We'd go have breakfast, and then we'd go into a general briefing. This shows where we're going in the target. They took, it's what the route we're in, the fighters, protection we'd have, the weather to expect. And then we break into smaller groups. The bombardiers would get go in a picture of the target, and the navigators would go into their section. And they had a minute-by-minute schedule where we should be because we're meeting other groups or where the fighters are going to pick us up in the middle of France. So after that, we'd go out to take a Jeep out to our airplane and sit, and if there's a green flare, the mission was on. A red flare, the mission was aborted generally because the weather where the target was bad. Always praying for a red flare, but go ahead. Well, that was a castle. I flew that later on, but this is from the IP into the target. And we'd go straight and level for about 10 minutes straight on in from the initial point right to the target. And if we couldn't, if it was covered or something, or smoke was covering it, we'd have a secondary target nearby that we could bomb. Go ahead. Well, that's showing the group going out to the airplane. That's probably a pilot or a co-pilot. He has his parachute on. The rest of us are carrying our parachutes. They're snap on our vests, our chests, and just keep them by our feet. Go ahead. I mentioned the escape hatch earlier. That's how we got in the airplane. Nowadays at the air show, they have little ladders going up there. I don't know why we didn't, but well, at 2022, I guess we made it then. We did. Go ahead. Well, that's the bomb. Oh, it should have been moved. The bomb is not armed when it's put aboard. There's a fuse in the front and a fuse in the back, and there's an arming vane that spins off in the air, and there's just plain ordinary cotter pin that holds the vane in place. And on a mission, once we took off, well, you see, I'd go back and arm the bombs before 10,000 feet where we went on auction, just pull the cotter pins out, and one of the waist gunners would take the pins out of the back. So they still aren't armed till they hit the air and the vane spins off and the detonator is free to hit the explosives. Go ahead. Well, that's the interior of the bomb bay. Those are 500-pound bombs, but normally we carry 10 500-pound bombs, 6,000-pound bombs, maybe 2,800-pound bombs. Go ahead. Well, that's our takeoff pattern. Here we are with all these air bases. They had to strictly follow their route and make the turn and come back up through the clouds. That was always scary. That was the second scariest part of the mission, is going through the clouds. Go ahead. Well, this is what happens sometimes. These are planes coming there, ones through, those two collided. So it was scary. Next. That was we'd form above the clouds in a group of 18 planes. We had the lead squadron, the low squadron, the high squadron. And each of us, of course, had our 10 guns. We had 180 guns to protect us against the German fighters. Go ahead. Flak was our biggest problem. The flak is the German 88. It's about a 5-inch shell, preset to explode at your altitude, preset altitude, whether it's 25, 26, 27,000 feet. Go ahead, and they fire in units of 4. Very accurate. They had radio, radar. Go ahead. Well, that's some flak bursting right around the planes. This one was taken out of our plane. Go ahead. These circled areas are all flak zones. You could hardly get in the continent without counting flak. We used to come in through the Zuiderzee. It was swampy and marshy and less defended, or otherwise come in near Bremen up there when we're going to northern Germany. Go ahead. That plane did land. That's flak damage. Go ahead. That one didn't do so well. Go ahead. There's some flak damage. The nose of the plane and bombardier and navigator were both killed off that one. Was my plane. Next. This shows more flak damage. So they were dangerous. We had flak damage, I guess, over 50% of the time. And there were 3,500 bombers were shot down in 1944 alone by flak. And another 600 were shot down by fighters. As I said earlier, the P-51s were just coming into quantity in England. And earlier, as I said, P-47s and P-31s could take us halfway to the target, but the P-51s could take us all the way to drop tanks. And another group of P-51s would pick us up at the target and take us home. Okay. I think so. Oh, let me go back. Back. Okay, so I've taken some clips, 3 out of the Memphis Belle and another one, but one seemed to be missing. But the first is the takeoff, the one missing is in combat of the Memphis Belle. The third one you'll see, and the fourth one is the landing after the Memphis Belle's 25th mission. Go ahead.